What's good, everybody? It's Batman, and we have an Naruto reaction video for this video today, and it's gonna be someone actually new. It's not gonna be the typical people we've been doing, like Six, Seth, or Swag, or Noodles, or or King Bullet, or Anime World, and so on and so forth. And Naruto Explain, you name it. Incredible, great channels, except for Noodles. No offense. He has some videos that are good. I'm not gonna bullshit. But then there's some where it's just out of this fucking world. But anyways, so we got this guy NCHammer. Now he came up as a suggestion on my YouTube channel, and I was like, all right, let me check this guy out. And then when I actually checked him out, he had about I can't remember his subscriber count. He had a crap ton of subscribers, like way more than 6. Okay. I wish it would. I don't know why it's not showing it. That's a little weird. And my phone, I do have my phone actually. Here. There's no way because I saw how much. Unless he just changed it to where you can't fucking see it now. Then I don't know, but. Yeah, okay. He has about 177,000 subscribers. That's a lot of fucking people. Obviously nowhere near the amount of Seth and Swag, but that's still impressive. It beats a lot of people that I know that are heavily Naruto content channels and so on and so forth. So he has a big fan base, and I've seen one of his videos, and it was a really good video. I was impressed. So I was like, all right, maybe I can give this guy a shot, and if there's something that appeals to me, video title wise, or a subject that I maybe haven't thought of yet, or maybe something I just feel like is interesting to react to, I'm like, fuck it, So there's a video, which I thought this would be interesting to do. Our previous video, we did Swag Kage's ranking of all the Edo Tensei ninja, from weakest to strongest. He has a video of the most broken jutsu in Naruto. So in his opinion, he thinks this is the most broken jutsu whatsoever, which I don't blame him. It's pretty freaking broken. Now, would I say it's the most broken jutsu? I would have to do some homework before making that type of decision. But it's understandable, and I would at least say, for sure, top 5, out of all jutsus, definitely needs to be top 5, okay? In my opinion, okay? From what I remember and know so far. But it's a really, really broken jutsu. So the title is understandable, the most broken jutsu in Naruto. And overall, what was appealing to me is the background with Shishui. Imagine if that motherfucker was actually brought back, because from my memory, I would have to go back to the manga or the anime or whatever. Kabuto does say, oh, I could bring back Shishui, T blah blah, and then Obito stated, he's like, no, don't push your luck or blah blah, something like that, where he's like, no, that's basically too risky. Applying in the sense that if you were to do that, that could actually backfire and cause problems. Which is really interesting in my opinion, because Obito was so worried about the guy where he was like, no, don't do that. Too risky. No, So I'm just pointing that out there because imagine if Shishu was actually brought back. He would have reversed that shit just like what Itachi did. Got out of it, and bam, now he's against them, and it would just cause so many fucking problems. Like, the guy could have been able to spam Kodomatsukami over and over as an Edo, and he would have been a beast. He would have been crazy. He would have Susanoo, Kodomatsukami, crazy Genjutsu, he would have been crazy. Teleportation, you name it. So it would have been really, really cool. And really thinking about it, a good video topic would be like, what if Shishui was brought back by Edo Tensei? How would that affect the war arc in the future? It would be interesting, right? But anyways, we're gonna dive into the video. Enough of me ranting and talking. That'll be the introduction, and we're gonna get into it. If you guys do not know who he is, check out his videos. If you like him, like, comment, and subscribe. Support him. It helps. I'll make sure to put his YouTube name and a link down in the description down below, and this way you guys can click on him and check him out. But let's get it, and Naruto vibes.
This video is sponsored by Tokyo.
We don't care about that. We need to get to business, okay?
Oh, this month.
No. Video. Come on.
Tokyo treat. Guys, make sure you use.
Okay, I want to point that out. That's badass. I like that. I'm actually jelly. You see the freaking flying rising kunai over there, Minato's kunai, and the thing that's badass. I like that a lot. And then I like how he has like his little shelf, has all these like collectible things. He has a nice setup. It's nice. I like it. Pretty cool.
the links that are both in my description and my pinned comment. Let's get to snacking. So Edo Tensei, what is it? How does it happen?
Why is he saying that? It's a little off topic, but why is he doing that? Edo Tensei? What the fuck you saying it like that? Edo Tensei or reanimation shoot? Like, bro.
How do you control
Don't say that.
the people you bring back? How is it countered? And more importantly, why was it created? All these questions and more will be answered right now.
Oh, and let me comment down below, guys, what you think about this potentially being my own video of mine. Do you think it'd be an interesting video topic to discuss Kabuto versus Obito, like Orange Mask Obito, not Rinnegan Obito, Orange Mask, because they have like a brief confrontation to where they're kind of talking. Obito's just like, I'm just gonna kill you, blah blah, whatever. He doesn't give a fuck, and he's about to fight him, and then he immediately like gets Edo Tensei reanimation, you know, and he has all the Akatsuki members, and Obito's like, like, oh shit, all right, you know, and he was still, from my memory at least, so I'd have to reanalyze it, was still like, all right, fuck you, I'll still fight you, whatever. You know, and it was about to go down. And at that point, who do you think would have won that fight? Do you think Kabuto with Sage Mode, along with all the Akatsuki members there, would have been enough to take down Obito? Or do you think Obito would have won? Because the videos that are out there on YouTube, we've had, you know, Swai Kage or Seth doing like Obito versus the 5 Kage, or Obito versus Minato, you know, or this or that, or whatever, you know, all kinds of interesting stuff. But to my knowledge, I would have to maybe search it in YouTube. I don't think anyone's ever done Kabuto against Obito Orange Mask. I think it would be interesting. I think it would be a good fight to talk about. So if you guys think so, let me know, and I would do that video topic. That would be the next versus battle video. And then also another thing I have to do, I already told you guys I'm going to be doing Minato versus Akatsuki, and I'm going to be concluding Guy versus Sasuke, because I had 2 parts with that. If you guys, that was a long time ago. So if you haven't seen those videos, make sure to watch those, and if they're still available, I'll put them in the description down below. One of them might be still blocked, because I was dealing with some copyright stuff, and eventually it's getting resolved. It just takes time. But I'm going to finalize and do the final part of it, because I did say in the second part of Guy versus Sasuke that I wanted to discuss 8th Gate Guy versus Rinnegan Sasuke. I thought that would be a pretty cool matchup to discuss. Now, even though you guys, if you are pretty knowledgeable and you know, whatever, you should know who's going to more likely win that fight, okay? And I'm just being honest. But we're going to talk about the, you know, obviously their strongest forms. Sasuke technically has 2. You know, he has the form where he's a Rinnegan, you know, and he finally has it, and he's testing it out, getting a feel for his abilities. And then you have, you know what I mean, like Valley of the End Rinnegan Sasuke, basically, where he's fighting against Naruto. So, and I feel like it'd be interesting to discuss that against Guy. But anyways, enough of all that. I just kind of wanted to recap. I wanted to put that out there because I thought it was interesting to talk about or bring up. So if you guys think I should do that video of Obito versus Kabuto, let me know. Anyways, let's go.
Now, because I'll tell you right now, this will be the longest Jutsu explained video I've ever created. Edo Tensei is not simple, and I'm not talking about the practicality of pulling it off. No, I'm talking about the laws and rules that go into it. But before we get into the legal script, let's go back to that all-important question. Why was it created? Edo Tensei was created by Tobirama Senju, Hashirama's little brother,
one of the
second Hokage. We also know,
even though I talk so much shit about Tobirama, bro, at the end of the day, you got to give credit when it's due. He did create probably the most insane jutsus. And other characters, obviously, in the Naruto series, perfected those jutsus or took them to a whole other level. And if it wasn't for him making those jutsus, the Naruto story would have went a whole other direction. Most definitely goated for creating jutsu. Absolutely.
The Warring States period. We know it was created during the Warring States period because this is when Tobirama was active in his creation of jutsus. That's when he also created Flying Raijin. We also know it was created then because he forbid Edo Tensei and made it a kinjutsu or a forbidden jutsu once Konoha was formed. This is because once Konoha was formed, there was peace between the Uchiha and the Senju, and in this era of peace, Tobirama gleaned that Edo Tensei would not be necessary. But knowing when Edo Tensei was created actually gives us a bit of insight into why it was created. The most glaringly obvious reason would be that Tobirama wanted to find a way to bring his brothers back to life, specifically Itama and Kurawama Senju. And this would make sense considering the fact that Tobirama's entire reason—
Is that legitimate? I don't remember that. If anything, I thought it was more of a measure to be able to fight against the Uchiha, kind of, or something, you know? Or, I don't know, you know? And at the end of the day, just the concept of that is just crazy, you know? Very, very crazy and broken and beneficial. But I never thought of that, for him to actually find a way to bring his brother back. It's interesting. Very, very interesting. And if that is actually legitimate, I don't know if he's about to show the evidence or not, then that's pretty sad. Imagine that. Imagine, like, being so desperate to see one of your loved ones that have died or passed away or whatever, to where you're willing to make a jutsu that allows you to bring them back to life just so you can talk with them or have them help you to aid you in the real world, you know? Like, the concept of it is pretty fucked, but at the same time, it's like, would you do that? You know what I mean? Like, would you actually be willing to do that? And in my opinion, if I had the ability and power to create something like that, I probably would do it out of, you know, being emotional and being, you know, and stupidity. But morally, it is fucked up. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you kind of got to, you know, accept it, embrace it, and let it be, and respect it that they're now gone and they're in the afterlife or whatever it is, you know, and just go out about your life. Because just imagine that, like, you bring back your brother or your mom or whoever, or your lover, and you're like, hey, I brought you back. How you doing? You know, like, it's like just for you to feel comfort or relief. It's, you know, and then they're like, what that, you know, and they're freaking out or who knows what, or maybe it's a good reaction, bad. Either way, it's interesting, but that's news to me if that's actually legitimate. That's interesting.
For helping Hashirama create Konoha is to make sure that children would no longer die in wars. So if...
Hey. Here we go. God damn it, we can't skip it.
It's me, your skin. Help me maintain my moisture balance with serum.
Fucking hate ads. Normally I just edit these out, but whatever.
If Tobirama could find a way to bring the children who had already died in wars back, then all of the past sins would be absolved. But I think his reasoning is actually deeper than that. And it has to do with something that...
And that's pretty interesting too, to be able to bring back all the dead and all the innocents that, you know... It's interesting because imagine if he, like, perfected a jutsu to a degree where he could bring them back, but, like, legitimately bring them back. Kind of like what Nagato did with Arena Rebirth, you know? 'Cause I guarantee you that's probably what he was trying to do. But obviously it didn't go like that, you know? And instead you kind of just bring someone back and they're kind of just like a walking corpse, you know, that can't die, really. You know, and nerfed to like a certain measure. So it's interesting. But just imagine, thinking about it, like imagine if he was successful and he did the jutsu, and next thing you know, like all these people that died, like for instance, like one thing that we all know that's a very shitty, tragic incident that happened, 9/11. Imagine a human being having the intelligence to be able to create, whether if it's technology or whatever the case may be, but having the ability to bring back people that died from either tragic events or whatever, you name it, you know, things that shouldn't have never happened. You know what I mean? That would be crazy, you know, like that would undo the sins, that would undo the darkness in the world and the negativity and so on and so forth. So it's interesting to think about that. If that was the drive and motivation that he had for making that forbidden jutsu, it's really, really interesting at that point, in my opinion, on a moral perspective and etc. Not even just for power or, you know, for basically the extent Orochimaru and Kabuto utilized it for. They didn't utilize it to bring back their loved ones and family. They just did it because, you know, to utilize as weapons and to mentally fuck with people and just for sinful things, you know? So...
I just said, absolving past sins. See, Tobirama was one of the biggest people in creating peace between the Uchiha and the Senju. In fact, when Tobirama's brother, Kurarama, asked how they were gonna break the cycle of hate between the Uchiha and the Senju when they had all lost family members, Tobirama said that you're gonna have to be able to push those emotions down. What if you didn't have to push those emotions down? What if instead you could simply get the people you've lost back? And yes, obviously this applies to Tobirama's brothers. Therefore, him and Hashirama would have no reason to hate the Senju. But I would go so far as to say that this also applied to the Uchiha. Tobirama himself took the life of Izuna, Madara's little brother. And maybe when he realized after he had taken somebody so close to Madara that Madara would never seek for a true and lasting peace, that he wanted to find a way to bring back Izuna. So why did Tobirama never use this jutsu? Well, the answer to that is actually somewhat obvious. He had morals. And to get into why Tobirama would have a moral dilemma with using this jutsu that he created, we have to talk about how the jutsu works. Tobirama was trying to find a way to take souls out of the Pure Land and return them to Earth. Pure Land is Naruto canonical heaven. All ninjas who die ascend there. But the only problem is these souls need a vessel that ties them to the earth. And I know what you're saying, well, why can't you just use the body of your friend who just died? And while that would be lovely, unfortunately the vessel has to be alive. Soul can't inhabit a dead body. The body is already gone. And I'm assuming Tobirama figured this out. More likely than not, Tobirama tried to pull the soul from the Pure Land and was successful in reaching the Pure Land and extracting said soul, but he tried to put it in a dead body or the body of the person who the soul belonged to. And this most likely—
Can we just talk about how intelligent you have to be in order to do something like that, though? Like, come on, like, that's the feat of itself. The fact that he was smart enough to be able to do that and figure that out is just crazy to me.
Didn't work or had terrifying results. Tobirama, then being incredibly intelligent, probably realized that he needed a living vessel to act as the anchor to Earth. And since Tobirama created this jutsu, at least in my head canon, to break the cycle of hate, if he had to take another life to bring a life back, you're just recreating the cycle. And this is why we don't see him bring his brothers back in a fight against Madara or something like that. But what's weird is that other people, specifically Mu, the second Tsuchikage, knew that Tobirama created this jutsu. We know this because the second Mizukage and the second Tsuchikage talk about how they've been brought back with Edo Tensei, and therefore it was Tobirama's
And not only that, I believe Kinkaku and Ginkaku even made a reference to it as well. So,
which means that his research on this jutsu had to be relatively public knowledge. So it's also maybe a possibility that he did use this jutsu, though we've never seen it. But let's get back to how this jutsu works.
Makes sense.
In order to reincarnate
like,
somebody,
it's not even a possibility. It's a guaranteed, an absolute fact that he did perform the jutsu, because it doesn't make any sense for the Kages to be referencing Tobirama and then Kikaku and Ginkaku to be referencing it, that, you know, that Tobirama was probably the caster of the jutsu, whatever. So it makes sense. That's all the proof you fucking need, you know? So
need a piece of their DNA. And this doesn't have to be a whole hand. It could be a fingernail. It could be hair. It could be saliva. Hell, Kabuto says that he could probably take blood off of Nagato's chakra rods that he used to kill Jiraiya in order to bring Jiraiya back. Though more often than not, people who want to use Edo Tensei end up grave robbing the people they want to bring back, which makes it all the more baffling that we do not protect the graves of important people better. Hashirama cells are sold at half priced in Costco. But let's say you have now acquired DNA of somebody you want to bring back.
He's not wrong.
You have a living vessel. There's one problem. The soul you're trying to grab has to exist in the Pure Land. Edo Tensei is not perfect. It's essentially a bridge from the earth to heaven. So should your soul have not made it to heaven,
kind of like what Obito
did, in the Shinigami's stomach because you used Reaper Death Seal to pull somebody into limbo and fight them for eternity, like Hiruzen and Minato. The bridge does not go to the Shinigami's stomach, so they cannot be brought back. The same can be said for Nagato's King of Hell. Should your soul be residing in said King of Hell, you will not be able to be brought back. Okay, so now
which is so interesting to me, how like the Pasapanes, or not the Pasapanes, the Renegon or the Sage of Six Paths, how their ability or power can link to like hell itself, or that version of it, you know? It's interesting.
You have a living sacrifice, the DNA of the person you want to reincarnate, and their soul is in the Pure Land. There's a special scroll that initiates the transfer from the Pure Land to that vessel. And on this special scroll, you have to smear the DNA of the person who you are trying to reincarnate. It's at this point that a seal appears on the ground, with the living vessel being at the center of the seal. And at this point, dust and ash from the surrounding area encapsulate the body, essentially kind of reforming the body. Because humans, as carbon-based life forms can essentially just have carbon from the surrounding areas terraform their body into the body of the previous person. Except it doesn't really work like that. Instead, the living vessel kind of acts as a caloric output, a burning energy in order to comprise all of this dust and ash together. And it's at that point that the dust and the ash becomes the entire body. That's right, with this kind of thing, you would assume that there would be a thin dust and ash layer over the living vessel's body, but that's not the case because we've seen Edo Tensei people get split in half and there's no meaty center. And if you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense if you consider what I'm about to tell you. You see, this whole process of getting turned into dust and ash is incredibly painful for the living vessel. Surprise. But what the true surprise is that the chakra signature of the person you're reincarnating completely takes over the living vessel's chakra signature. And what's even more surprising than that is that technically the living vessel is still alive. Though your chakra signature and body are basically entirely gone until Edo Tensei has been released, the living vessel is inside of that body. And what's even more confusing is that when Edo Tensei is released, the living vessel body reappears amongst a pile of dust and ash. So a bit like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly,
literally,
the body will entirely emulsify and then recreate it.
That's basically the best way of explaining that.
itself over the duration of Edo Tensei, which is good because imagine what it would look like if Minato had lost his arms and then the living vessel's blood was just squirting out. Personally, I think they should have done that to make you understand how truly metal Edo Tensei is, but it's a children's show. But here's the thing, Edo Tensei wasn't always as perfect as it.
I wouldn't say it's a children's show. Come on, I don't know about all that. Naruto gets pretty fucking dark.
Was when we saw it in
but
the
that
war.
would have been
Tobirama
way darker to put, and I do agree that would have been cool.
Techniques, the souls he brought back were much weaker than they were in their lifetime, and also he could only control a couple at a time, which I guess pretty much all but confirms that Tobirama did in fact use this jutsu. Listen, maybe he made it for a good purpose and then he realized, yeah, this could be helpful on the war front. He wasn't a perfect person, but just like with a lot of Tobirama's jutsu, people would take the jutsu and run with it down the line. Minato perfected Flying Raijin, Naruto perfected Shadow Clone, Orochimaru and Kabuto perfected Edo Tensei, but they did it separately. Orochimaru stumbled upon this kinjutsu decades after Tobirama's death, and through a lot of trial and error and a lot of research, he was able to bring the souls close to their original power levels. I say close to their original powers because when we see Orochimaru use Edo Tensei to bring both Tobirama and Hashirama back to life, if they were at full power, Hiruzen wouldn't have been around very long. That being said, Hiruzen did use the old Hail Mary and use Reaper Death Seal on all three of them. Orochimaru also, like Tobirama, didn't have perfect control over the people he brought back. Enter Kabuto. Kabuto was able to make sure that everybody he brought back was just as powerful as they were in their lifetime. He was also able to control as many people as he needed to at a time. This is because Edo Tensei technically takes no chakra to use. You heard me correctly.
Crazy.
The summoner of Edo Tensei has to use absolutely no chakra to control those who they have summoned. So, resources permitting, you can infinitely summon people. By resources, I mean living vessels and DNA.
Summon an
Having
army.
These improvements allow him to essentially reincarnate in a mortal army of the strongest ninjas on Earth, made Kabuto say that this is probably the strongest jutsu ever made, and he's not wrong. There's also the fact that these reincarnations
that just gave me two concepts that I actually need to discuss. Two concepts. But man, that's interesting.
And literally anywhere, because I'll remind you, they're a summoning. So you can pull the soul out of the Pure Land, slap it into a living vessel, and then put that person in a coffin and summon them whenever you need them. Tobirama and Hashirama, when they were summoned to fight against Hiruzen, had already been pulled out of the Pure Land for a long time. Their body sits in a kind of stasis limbo in the living vessel inside of that coffin, and they can be sent back to their coffin by summoning the coffin and just throwing them back in it. But how do you control some of the strongest ninjas on Earth? Well, back in Tobirama's day, simply summoning these souls allowed you to control the movements of the living vessel they encapsulate. You could restrict their movement or make them attack other people. You can even shut them down and throw them back in their coffin. And this is because they were coming back weaker than they were when they were alive. But what happens when you perfect this jutsu, and now you're dealing with Hashirama or Madara at their highest level of strength. Well, that's where the problems arise, because these incredibly strong ninja can hypothetically resist the control of Edo Tensei. In fact, Tobirama was able to fight against the summoning of Orochimaru until Orochimaru got his favorite little ingredient to make anything stronger, Hashirama's cells. Through an inexplicable mean, Orochimaru used the Hashirama cell to increase the strength of the binding that he had over those people who he brought back with Edo Tensei. And while this was enough to stabilize Tobirama, Orochimaru admitted that Hashirama could still break free if he wanted to. I shouldn't have said unknown means. There actually is a known mean as to how Orochimaru was able to get Hashirama's cells into his Edo Tensei people. The use of a talisman, usually connected to a kunai, that Orochimaru and Kabuto would stick into the brains of the people that they Edo Tensei'd back. Now, this seal came in varying strengths. Before Orochimaru found a way to bind Hashirama's cells to it in order to increase its strength, the seal would allow those who were brought back to retain their personality. They could approach any task that their summoner tells them to do in whatever way that they would usually do it, so long as they do it. And while this may seem like a loose kind of control, it's actually very powerful, because by not fully taking over the psyche of the person you brought back, they can fight in the way that they have always fought. They know how to use their abilities better than anyone. And should hypothetically the circumstance arise where the person you've brought back is fighting somebody they once knew, by having their personality intact, it's kind of psychological warfare. That being said, the big downside with this is that technically the person you've summoned can undermine you even though they are doing the thing you want them to do. Gengetsu, the second Mizukage, is a perfect example of this. While he was tasked to destroy the 4th Squadron, the one that Gaara was leading, he was telling everybody which clans to not attack. He was telling everybody about his techniques and how best to counter them. And while he was technically still committing an act of war against the allied shinobi forces, this was his plan to undermine the person who summoned him. And while this may seem like a huge disadvantage, it's actually not, because they're still technically listening to you, and this is the level of control Kabuto prefers. And if he wanted to, he could immediately do a kill switch like that, and they're going all out and they're just emotionless. So, but he just didn't care. You know what I mean? He just had them to kind of do whatever, and that was it. Like, at the end of the day, he can fully control you, make you bloodlusted and completely emotionalist at any point. He did that to Nagato, and and I think he did it to Itachi as well. And probably did it to other people, but I just don't remember. But yeah, so that's the thing. It's not really bad or anything. It's just, if anything, Kabuto was originally letting them have their own emotions and talk and whatever to emit psychological warfare and to really fuck with people and give him mental nerves and give him more of the advantage in battle. But then when it was kind of backfiring, where the soul started getting unstable, or they were kind of, helping by talking and whatnot, then he was like, all right, it's not really working. I need to just make them go all out and kill, so... Reason that Kabuto prefers this level of control is because technically all he has to do in this circumstance is direct his army in a direction, and they will take care of everything else. The level of control Orochimaru prefers, however, is the complete erasure of all personality. In this circumstance, the summoner controls all actions of the summon. They essentially just become avatars that the summoner can channel his will through. And while this is still very effective and you will never have any of your summoned rally against you, it's not as powerful in the grand scheme because it requires a massive amount of attention from the summoner. But with this level of control, you can use these summoned to speak through or have them summon other people to summon. And Kabuto actually writes on most of his seals a kind of backdoor switch to activate this level of control should the person get too unruly. But that brings us back to the topic of control. We've already stated that Orochimaru added Hashirama's cells to these seals in order to strengthen their power. But how does Kabuto strengthen this power? Well, Kabuto funnels power from Anko's curse mark. Essentially, he uses Senjutsu chakra, making his reincarnations almost a sage move. And the only true drawback to any of this is the fact that there's going to be a physical line of chakra always between the summoned and the summoner, which allows sensor type ninjas to draw a line to where the summoner is. But unfortunately, killing the summoner does not stop the summoned.
Yep.
And that brings us with a perfect segue into our next topic, rules. We've talked about how and why Edo Tensei was created, and we even talked about how it works, but we haven't talked about the rules that are around it. And there is a lot of rules around it. And the misconception of these rules leads to a lot of the questions that I get asked on a daily basis.
Now thinking about it, that's really crazy to think about. The fact that Orochimaru uses Hashirama cells to enhance his Edos, you know, and bring them to their basically the most fullest, closest potential of power. Kabuto is doing it with Anko's curse mark, okay, basically in its own sense of sage mode, okay. And with all that being said, that means all the fucking Edos that he was controlling were being enhanced with like sage mode freaking chakra and whatnot, or like curse mark power. That's crazy to think about. Meaning adding another buff, you know, and whatnot, and making these Edo Ninja more stronger than their original self, which is pretty crazy to think about. Totally forgot that was a thing.
Get your notepad out, and I'll answer a couple of the questions that everybody has about Edo Tensei here. So when you summon somebody into their living vessel, their body is all gray and cracked and gross.
Yep.
And this is the case for literally everyone who's been summoned. But the summoner, when they put in the talisman, can choose whether or not they want to rejuvenate the body of the summoned, i.e. restore their appearance to what they used to look like. There's literally no benefit to rejuvenating them outside of they look like they used to. The only true difference in appearances amongst those who have been Edo Tensei is the pupils. Not the pupils, actually they're called the sclerae, the thing around your pupil. Not even the thing around your pupil, it's the thing around your cornea. I'm not an ophthalmologist. But in those who have been summoned that still have their personalities, the white area, as I will be referring to it from now on, turns gray. Those with their personalities erased, it's black. A reincarnated individual will always have the Kekkei Genkai and Kekkei Toda they had in their lifetimes, along with all of the abilities they have.
Crazy.
And yes, you are reincarnated as you were when you died. This includes any physical handicaps you had at the time of your death. That's why Nagato's legs don't work when he's reincarnated. But this seems to only pertain to physical handicaps, because illnesses that you had at the time of your death don't come with you when you're summoned. And
Kemamaru and Itachi are a perfect example.
The things that killed you will not come with you, obviously. You're not going to come with a bunch of holes. The only inconsistency here is whether or not things that have been grafted onto you will also come when you are summoned. What do I mean by that? Hanzo the Salamander, when he was very young, had the poison sac of a river salamander put into his body so he would make his own poison. When he was reincarnated, he was brought back with this poison sac. However, Madara was not brought back with the Hashirama cell he had grafted onto himself. And because of that, Kabuto had to make his own for Madara. But since we're talking about Madara, let's talk about the question I get all the time with Madara. Why is he young? And what's funny is there's not a complicated answer to this. Everybody else looks like what they looked like when they died, right? But for some reason, Madara is younger than he was when he died. Or is he? I'll remind you, Madara dies twice. One, when he died in his fight against Hashirama and Tobirama. And then again when he died in his cave after grafting Hashirama cells to himself. But here's the thing. Technically, that was Hagoromo. What do I mean? Combinations of both Indra and Ashura's chakra allowed Madara to awaken the Rinnegan. The reason you awaken the Rinnegan in that situation is because when you combined Indra and Ashura's chakra, you get Hagoromo's chakra, and he had the Rinnegan. So Madara died when Hashirama killed him, but Hagoromo died when Madara died a second time. This is why Madara looks exactly like what he looks like when Hashirama killed him the first time. That is further enhanced by the fact that those who are summoned are reincarnated with the clothes they were wearing when they died. And while they're not actually clothes, they're actually just an extension of their body through the dust and ash hole thing. Still, Hashirama was wearing his traditional battle outfit he was wearing against Hashirama. And while you are spawned in with your clothes, you're not given your weapons. The 7 swordsmen of the mist are only able to use the swords that Kabuto collected. The only exception to this rule is Ginkaku and Kinkaku, because apparently they hid the Sage of Six Paths' sacred treasures within themselves. And what's even—
One moment, guys.
Fine, they're made of ash and dust. They'll just re-come together.
Literally.
This is actually purposely done by Tobirama, who created the jutsu, because Tobirama wasn't bringing back legendary ninja. No, he was bringing back any ninja to use in a kamikaze-like style. Specifically, he would use these bodies to pull off mutually multiplying explosive tag jutsu. Essentially, by using the body of the summoned as a medium to create explosive tags, they can make their body an infinitely scaling series of explosions. Because as their body turns into more...
Like some Conan type shit. Prep time Conan? Yeah. Even though she had 6 billion paper bombs, it's infinite for that jutsu as well. So it could just get it could get to 6 billion or more.
and more explosive tags, they also regenerate. And so they can set off an infinite series of explosions. So you don't need Madara, you just need anybody. And in the Warring States period, when it was more like a traditional battlefield where large groups of ninja would run into each other, an infinite series of explosions is gonna do a good amount of work. And considering there's no gore or anything, because those who are summoned technically don't bleed, unless they're doing a summoning technique, which is a weird caveat to me, it's just explosions. And a common misconception is that those who are reincarnated have infinite chakra. While it's technically true in a sense, they have infinitely refilling chakra.
Yeah, exactly. It's not actual infinite, but in a sense, like speaking wise, it technically is, because their chakra, it's always regenerating.
Means that their chakra can be 100, but it can be 100 as many times as they want. But if there's a jutsu that requires 110 chakra, they won't be able to do it. This is evidenced by the fact that when Mu splits his body to avoid Naruto's Rasengan, his chakra reserves are cut in half and he can no longer perform his Kaketoda. Or the fact that all people who have been summoned can't use infinite clones. Oh, I lied. They also can bleed if they use their Mangekyo Sharingan, but because they perpetually regenerate.
And then not only that, like when the Divine Tree, like, you know, was doing things, it like absorbed Minato's chakra, I believe, and clearly indicating that it can drain you. And then not only that, like, I think there was like, trying to remember like another time. I think there was other examples of where it clearly indicated that Edo have, you know, a certain amount of chakra, but it's just constantly regenerating. So, you know, yeah, that's just basically how that goes.
The bleeding eyes don't make them go blind. So technically, anybody with an MS who gets summoned has EMS. So now that something this powerful exists, how on earth do we counter it? There has to be drawbacks, right? And while the list of drawbacks isn't quite as long as I would like it to be, there is some. Like I said earlier, killing the summoner does not get rid of the summon, because remember, it takes no chakra from the summoner after they've been summoned. Therefore, you kill the summoner, the summoned just exist forever. There's only 3 ways to get rid of those who have been summoned. Reaper Death Seal, Hiruzen taught us that. Having the summoner end the technique, either voluntarily or through genjutsu like Itachi did. Or the third, in much less reliable way, form an emotional connection with those who've been reincarnated and really just talk no jutsu them into
So we're gonna look at that one more time, because that's the important part about it.
From the summoner after they've been summoned. Therefore, you kill the summoner, the summoned just exist forever. There's only 3 ways to get rid of those who have been summoned. Reaper Death Seal, Hiruzen taught us that. Having the summoner end the technique, either voluntarily or through genjutsu like Itachi did. Or the third, in much less reliable way, form an emotional connection with those who've been reincarnated and really just talk no jutsu them into going back to heaven. Essentially, you can talk to those who have been reincarnated, and if you're nice enough, they can will themselves out of the body. Obviously, you can also seal those who have been summoned and just let them chill out for a little while. Gaara does this with Grand Sand Mausoleum. Sai does it with his Tiger Scroll. Essentially, any high-level Fuinjutsu will be able to seal a summoned person. Now, it won't...
We should file claim.
Just did.
I love ads, guys. It's just great. It's fantastic. State Farm, right?
Pull-ups, refastenable sides, help
Ooh,
12
diapers
times last
now.
longer.
Yay. Big kid.
Won't release their soul from the summoning. They'll just be in your seal, but they're still not wreaking havoc. On top of this, summoned people are susceptible to
basically
yin
contain
yang
it,
release. Since yin yang release is essentially the creation of all things, you can manipulate souls as well with it. So something like a true seeker orb, if it hits a summoned person, will also destroy the soul. This is why Minato wasn't able to regenerate his arms, and even when he was released from his living vessel, we saw him return to the Pure Lands with no arms.
Yeah, that's true. I totally missed that detail. Nice. I totally forgot about it, yeah.
Should a Truth Seeker orb go through a summoned person's heart, it would kill them. And not just the living vessel and the reincarnated person, it would destroy their soul. And then there's the truly unpleasant way to get pulled out of your living vessel, the Sword of Totsuka. See, Itachi uses the Sword of Totsuka to seal Nagato. And the Sword of Totsuka essentially is a sword that if you're stabbed with it, it will put your soul in a realm called the Realm of Drunken Dreams. It's a bit like being sealed by the Shinigami, having your soul pulled into limbo. And while it's unclear as to whether or not the releasal of the summoning pulls people out of this realm of drunken dreams, we can at least partially assume that Nagato is living in a realm that is essentially like living in the dizziest you've ever been forever. It's not great. Also, technically, the use of Kodo Matsukame can overwrite the commands of the summoner in the summoned heads. Itachi does this to himself. And while the summoner can regain control of that summoned person, he has to get their talisman and then re-put it in them. And then there's the largest.
So there's ways to go around it, obviously. There's the three main ways, and then there's these very rare circumstantial ways that can also counter it, you know?
Glaring hole with Edo Tensei that still to this day aggravates me deeply. If the summoned knows the hand seals to activate Edo Tensei, they can sever the contract with the summoner. And you're like, oh, cool, Tobirama put an out in there in case he ever got summoned back, so we could just send his soul back to the Pure Land. Nope. One, for some reason, Tobirama doesn't know how to do this. Two, for some reason, Madara does. And if you sever this contract with your summoner, you just get to be immortal and have infinite chakra with nobody controlling you. Madara refers to it as the one risk of this technique. That's a very big one risk.
Yeah, that's a very, very bad risk.
And it's not like it's 100 hand seals. It's 5. With just trial and error, you could probably figure it out. So now there's a person running around with infinitely refilling chakra, complete regenerative ability, and nobody can tell them what to do. Also, technically, you can put Black Rod receivers in the reincarnated and control them like Nagato did with the Six Paths of Pains. This is what Obito did with the Jinchuriki. So yeah, even though this jutsu is incredibly powerful, there is a couple very glaring issues. And that's why Madara's soul was not released when Kabuto released Edo Tensei. It is single-handedly one of the biggest ass pulls in literature. Something that could have been avoided if Madara just, I don't know, transferred his consciousness to a soldier nearby in the way Orochimaru does. But nope, he just Uno reverse carded Edo Tensei. That's all I know on it. Now you know as much as I do, so you can be as angry as me. I hope you like this video.
I'm not really angry. I thought it was awesome.
Like the video.
I'll never forget that moment where I'm like, this motherfucker just reversed it and exposed the biggest risk of the jutsu, and now you have literally an infinite chakra immortal regenerating weapon on the loose. What do you do now? You know, so I thought it was an awesome freaking moment. But that's a really good video. He really hit the ballpark with that, kind of similar to like with the lore videos that Swag Kage's done, or better yet, Naruto Explain has done. Really, really good video. I enjoyed it. If you guys enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts, give him any support that he deserves. But as for me to basically conclude and finalize this video, I did say they brought two things that were interesting to me that I wanted to talk about really quick. I'm not going to rant too long about it. One, imagine like in Boruto, where there becomes like the next big bad or a villain or whatever. I haven't seen anything with Boruto, so no spoilers. Don't say anything, please. But, you know, imagine, like, eventually there's a point where, like, let's say Naruto dies, Sasuke dies, you know, whatever, all that crap. And then Orochimaru is like, oh, you think you've won, buddy? Nah. Uses Edo Tensei, brings Naruto back, brings freaking Sasuke back, brings all the Hokage, the strongest Uchihas, and they're all just right there, ready to fight and throw down, you know? And then basically Orochimaru is like, he's threatening peace and he's trying to do whatever. Kill him. Like, imagine that, bro. Like, that shit would be crazy. Like, imagine seeing Madara, you know, Shishui, Like all the most powerful Uchiha, all the Hokages, you know, like you name it, just as Edo, and they all just pull up and they're fighting the villain or whatever. That would be in fucking insane. It would, not only would it be such an awesome moment for Orochimaru to be on, or maybe even Kabuto to do it, because he's still alive during Boruto, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. It'd be crazy. Or better yet, if Sasuke was to learn the jutsu, because he has the Rinnegan and everything, he's smart, and he was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna bring back, you know, some Uchiha people, whatever, this and that, and yada yada, you know, and that's it. It'd be crazy. I think that'd be really cool to bring back Edo Tensei and Boruto, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Another thing, why the fuck did Tobirama not bring back Hashirama whenever he needed him? Like, Hashirama dies at a certain point, right? Then it's Tobirama as the Hokage. If you're fighting against, like, someone strong or in a war, or better yet, the Kinkaku and Ginkaku force, you know, why in God's name did he not just summon Hashirama? You know what I mean? Like, or an Uchiha that he may have known that it was really strong or whatever. Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, why would you just summon like a random nobody and use it for a paper bomb infinite explosion jutsu? Like, that's fucking stupid. Summon a person that's strong and that can just backpack and solo everybody, basically. You know what I mean? Like, that's something I never understood why Tobirama never did that. If you guys want to, you know, maybe think of a way or a reason why, whatever, by all means, make my day. You know, there's that, and then another thing as well, which this would be interesting to me. If Sasuke was to learn Edo Tensei, right? You know, why doesn't he just learn Edo Tensei and then summon all the Uchiha, like all of them, okay? Every single fucking one of them. And then use Arena Rebirth to bring them back to life. He could literally bring back the entire Uchiha clan. Now, obviously, he would die by doing that. So he would have to find some fucking way in order to make sure he doesn't suffer the consequence of doing that jutsu to be able to stay alive or whatever. But it's either he dies, but now the entire Uchiha clan's back, or he finds a loophole around it, which it's possible. It happens all the time in fucking Naruto. You know, and he's still alive, and now the entire Uchiha clan's alive. Why didn't he just do that? I don't understand. Am I crazy? Am I missing something? You know, let me know about that too. You know, I could probably think of some other things as well with you know, Edo Tensei that could be, you know, interesting or game changers or you know, why this, you know, whatever. But I'm not really going to get too much into it. But I thought those two concepts were the most interesting to me at the very least. And that's basically all I'll say at that point. But other than that, guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe for more content. Subscribe if you guys are a Naruto fan and you enjoy my channel. There'll be plenty more content to come along the way. Appreciate you guys. Sorry for the video for being pretty long, but I thought this was a really cool topic, and I kind of wanted to really give my own elaborations on it and emphasis. So it is what it is. I'm a big fan. Passionate about Naruto. Sorry, not sorry. Peace, guys.